Picture waking up tomorrow morning, no phone, no supermarket, no clean running water, no heater, just you, a dense forest, and nearly 10,000 wild things wanting to end you. That was Tuesday for our ancestors. We talk endlessly about ancient empires, Rome, Egypt, or Greece, but those societies had things pretty figured out. Warm bread, wine, servants for the laundry. Quite cozy. What I want to discuss today actually goes much further back, way deeper. We are talking about the humans, who had absolutely nothing, no farming, no concrete cities, no weekends to enjoy, just relentless, raw, and beautiful survival, and somehow they survived like this for hundreds of thousands of years. So today, we are exploring exactly how those prehistoric humans actually managed, not the sanitized museum display version, but the real deal. The crackling fires, the constant fear, strange foods, tribal drama, and that completely insane mental grit required just to make it to age 30. Let us begin. Before giving credit to our ancestors, let us be honest about one detail. If you and I were dropped into the ancient Paleolithic era right now, we would probably perish within a week. Honestly, by day 3, you do not know which forest berries are poisonous. You have no clue how to spark fire without a lighter. You cannot track wild animals. You cannot construct a shelter. You cannot even read shifting weather patterns correctly. You would likely gulp contaminated river water on day 1. Spend day 2 dealing with terrible stomach issues behind some bushes, and by day 3, a giant cave bear would smell you from half a mile away, ending your little journey right there. Game over. Yet, here is the truly fascinating part. Our early ancestors were not born knowing this information either. They figured it out across generations, slowly, painfully, and through a ton of trial and error. By error, I mean actual death, constant demise. The human, our species, is basically the result of millions of years of humans figuring out what not to do. Every bit of survival wisdom passed down to the next generation was paid for in blood, hunger, and probably plenty of frustrated grunting. So let's look closely at how they did it. Here is something nobody ever tells you about prehistoric life. Ancient humans thought about food roughly 90% of the time. The other 10% went to sleeping, reproducing, and stressing out about predators. Honestly, fair enough. Finding food back then was nothing like raiding your fridge at midnight. It was a relentless job with no pay, no guaranteed meal, and a very real chance that dinner would try to end you before you ended it. Hunting was the legendary part, the stuff painted on cave walls, mammoths, giant bison, woolly rhinos, but realistically, most of the time our ancestors were not hunting those beasts. Why? Because a mammoth is basically the size of a school bus, carrying weapons the length of a car. People with nothing but pointed sticks had to be incredibly clever, incredibly patient, and ridiculously lucky to down one. What they really ate most of the time was much smaller game: rabbits, birds, fish, and bugs. Yes, insects, packed with protein, simple to catch, delicious if you are starving, which they always were. If you are cringing right now, remember that half the planet still eats bugs today and considers them a delicacy. You are the weird one, but catching small game was only one part of the story. The true unsung hero of ancient survival was foraging. Women in these ancient societies did most of the foraging, and research suggests they actually provided most of the group's daily calories. Came from roots, tubers, nuts, seeds, fruits, berries, mushrooms, and leaves. They knew their environment like a map. They knew which plants were safe, which were seasonal, which could be stored, and which could actually be used medicinally. This wasn't just casual knowledge, it was encyclopedic, generational, and highly sophisticated. Botanical expertise, a prehistoric woman, spotting which mushroom was safe to eat, versus the one that would destroy your organs, was actually performing a difficult cognitive task that would easily impress a modern biologist today. And then there was the truly underrated technique of scavenging. We used to think scavenging was only a backup plan for failed hunts. The loser option, new research, shows it was a highly deliberate, clever strategy. Our ancestors would follow lions and hyenas, observe their kill, then use noise, numbers, and fire to scare the beast off and steal the carcass. Bold, absolutely. Effective, extremely. Safe, debatable. The point is, early humans were not picky eaters. They ate what was there, learned what was safe, and they built a nutritional resilience that is honestly amazing. A modern human, raised entirely on ultra-processed food, has the dietary resilience of a tissue in a heavy storm. Our ancestors could eat just about anything, anywhere. Let's talk about where they actually slept. The word cave pops up quite a bit when we talk about prehistoric times. Cavemen, cave paintings, and cave bears. Yes, caves were used, but here is the thing. Caves are actually fantastic real estate when you really think about it. Stable temperatures, year-round, shelter from harsh wind and rain, a defensible entrance, natural structure needing zero setup. Construction, the big catch, there just aren't many natural caves, and the ones that existed were usually already occupied by wild animals, who were way bigger and much angrier than any human, so our early ancestors built their own shelters. This is where things get truly impressive. Archaeological evidence, some over 400,000 years old, shows early humans constructing sturdy shelters from branches, animal hides, bones, and even mammoth tusks. They were designing real architecture way before having a written language, before they had metal tools or had anything we would recognize as modern technology. The building logic was actually sound. Angle thick branches against each other to make a frame, layer animal hides over the top for waterproofing, then weigh down those edges with heavy rocks or bones to stop wind from ripping everything apart. Inside, they lined the floor with dry grass or extra animal hides for insulation. Result, a structure that was warm, mostly dry, and completely invisible to flying predators. Not bad for a species who figured it out from scratch with no YouTube tutorial. And here is a detail I absolutely love. Evidence suggests these prehistoric humans were highly aware of wind direction when choosing their shelter sites. They positioned entrances away from cold winds. They built near water, but not too close, near enough for convenience, but far enough to avoid flooding and the predators that gathered near the water at night. These weren't random choices. This was true environmental literacy on a very deep level. They were reading the entire landscape and making smart, calculated decisions based on patterns they observed over years. That is not instinct. That is intelligence. Then came the single greatest invention of all time: fire. Fire is easily the biggest invention in human history, and absolutely nothing else comes close. Forget the wheel, the internet, or even antibiotics. Fire. Hear me out. Before controlled fire, our ancestors were basically just slightly smarter apes, but with fire, everything changed almost overnight. Cooking completely transformed nutrition. Raw meat is tough to chew, harder to digest, and packed with nasty parasites that will totally ruin your entire month. Cooked meat is tender, way easier to digest, and much safer. The energy we get from cooked meals compared to raw food is incredibly high. Many experts actually argue that cooking literally supercharged human brain development. Why? Because we were suddenly pulling more energy from the same food. And that extra fuel went straight to powering up our expanding brains, so, really, in a big way, fire made us smarter. We literally cooked ourselves into intelligence. Fire's warmth expanded the range of environments where humans could survive. Before it, you basically had to live somewhere mild, but with fire, you could brave much colder climates, higher altitudes, and survive freezing winters, ice. Age Europe suddenly became habitable. Siberia was now crossable. The entire colonization of our planet by Homo sapiens was only possible because of our ability to carry warmth with us. Light also extended our productive hours after dark. Without flames, you do absolutely nothing. You sit in pitch black hoping nothing eats you. With fire, you can work, chat, build tools, plan, and socialize. Firelight extended our minds and social lives by ours every single day. Protection kept dangerous predators away. Most animals are terrified of it. A fire burning at the entrance of your shelter meant wolves, lions, and hyenas kept their distance. Talk about a defense system and weapon rolled into one. And then there's the social. That warm campfire. Picture early humans sitting around the flames together, sharing food and sharing stories. This is where human culture was first born. Oral tradition, ancient mythology, deep social bonds, all of it was nurtured right around that fire. Some modern anthropologists call it the first technology of community. How do they actually make fire? Well, multiple methods depending on the era and location. Striking flint against real iron pyrite creates sparks, and if those hot sparks land on dry tinder, fungus, or fine bark fibers and grass, boom, you have fire. Friction methods, like rotating a wooden stick rapidly against a flat board, also work beautifully. Require serious technique and pure stamina. Both methods were known and used by early prehistoric humans, and both require way more skill than they actually look like they do. Try it sometime, I dare you. Then come back and tell me how long it took you. Now, here is the single most critical survival truth of the entire prehistoric world. You could never survive alone. Seriously, that cannot be overstated. Alone. Human in the Paleolithic era was a dead human. Too slow, far too weak, too vulnerable. No claws, no venom, no tough shell, no camouflage. We humans, biologically speaking, are just laughably helpless as individual organisms, but as a group, terrifying. Early hunter-gatherer bands usually numbered between 20 and 50 people. This was not random. It was the absolute perfect size for survival, big enough to share the mental load of survival knowledge, coordinate wild hunts, and defend against fierce predators, small enough to eat from the local environment without totally ruining it. In these groups, daily roles were not rigid, but they were real, experienced. Hunters passed their knowledge to the young. Wise elders who could no longer run were walking libraries of environmental memory. They still recalled the drought from 40 years ago, that rare migration pattern, only occurring once a decade, the plant sprouting right after wildfires. Their deep wisdom saved the tribe. Children were a total shared responsibility. Everyone pitched in to raise them. That phrase, "it takes a village," was no metaphor. It was their literal survival policy. Fighting inside the camp was incredibly dangerous, since a fractured tribe was a dead one. This sparked intense social pressure to cooperate, to show fairness, and read other people's feelings and true motives perfectly. Some scientists believe that the sheer complexity of ancient social lives, the gossip, the politics, and emotional intelligence, was the main driver of brain growth. We got smart not for crafting tools, but to handle each other. The daily drama of prehistoric life was probably wild, by the way. 50 stressed out people living in Each other's pockets 24 hours a day, 0. Privacy, tiny resources, and genuine. Life and death stakes. Talk about reality. Television waiting to happen, I don't know. What is, but there is another. Massive problem, you get cut today, clean it up. Slap on a bandage, maybe. Some healing cream, done, you get a fever, you chug water. Take medicine and sleep it off. Back then, a simple infected scratch could kill you. A high fever could end you. A broken bone was fatal. Childbirth regularly took mothers. Even tooth decay was life-threatening, yet our ancestors survived, reaching old age quite often. How? Well, plant medicine, for starters, was way more advanced than we usually think. Digging up ancient sites shows our ancestors using wild plants, like yarrow for wound care, willow bark, loaded with salicylic acid, the core ingredient in aspirin. To fight pain and fever, they used ephedra as a stimulant. Plants with genuine germ-fighting powers were put on bad wounds. It wasn't magic, it was real. Hands-on science? Try this plant on the cut. Does it get better or worse? Remember that result. Teach your kids. That is the scientific method, just at a much slower pace with higher stakes for making mistakes. Fixing wounds meant cleaning them using special clays or wild moss and applying animal fat as a seal. Was it as effective as our medicine? No, but they had something, and back then, that was often the choice between living and dying. Evidence of healed bones is incredibly touching. Fossil remains from the Stone Age reveal healed fractures, really bad ones that meant weeks of complete rest. This means the hurt person was fed and protected by their tribe when they could not help out. That shows teamwork, real empathy, and looking after each other when they could not carry their load. That is not savage behavior. That is real civilization. In its purest form. We've talked a lot about survival. Let's look together at the psychological side of things, because it's honestly so overlooked. Just imagine the massive daily stress of prehistoric life. Every single day brings the very real threat of starving, of being attacked, of getting sick or losing a person you care about. And remember, there is no safety net, no hospital, no doctor to call. That is an incredible mental burden to bear. Yet, the evidence shows that early humans were not broken by it. They created art. They honored their dead with sacred rituals and painted their skin. They created music and shared stories so deeply complex and profound that those tales actually built our future cultures. They still found true joy despite surviving in environments that would send you and me into a complete mental breakdown before the end of week 1. How? Well, first, community. Being around people you trust, those who rely on you and whom you rely on, is the single best mental health stabilizers we have even to this day. Depression and anxiety are closely linked to being completely alone, but our ancestors were rarely ever isolated. And second, purpose. Each morning brought clear, vital tasks: gather food, build shelter, protect the kids. There's no existential dread when you have a direct survival reason to crawl out of bed each day. And finally, and this is the part 1, find most incredible, they had ritual, sacred ceremonies, burials, seasonal celebrations, and rites of passage. These weren't just silly superstition. Ritual is a mental tool for managing the heavy weight of uncertainty when the world makes absolutely no sense. Ritual offers us a feeling, however temporary, of true control, and having control keeps us mentally safe. We rely on it today. We just call it by different names, but the question everyone is asking is how our ancestors managed to thrive for hundreds of thousands of years without ChatGPT. No, honestly, how on earth did they last for so long? Humans with our very same minds and bodies have existed for 300,000 years, maybe even longer, and our genus, Homo, goes back almost 3 million years. For the vast majority of human history, people lived exactly how we talked about today: hunting, gathering, seeking shelter, cooperating, adapting generation after generation, surviving ice ages, harsh droughts, volcanic winters, continental migrations. They didn't just survive, they absolutely dominated. By the time cleared and early farming became possible, humans had settled every continent except Antarctica. They had crossed land bridges into the Americas. They even navigated open oceans to reach Australia. They even survived the Toba supervolcano, arguably the closest our species ever came to extinction, and rebuilt from what was maybe a few thousand survivors. Honestly, that is no accident. That is an extraordinary, almost unbelievable resilience. So, from now on, when your pizza is delivered 5 minutes late and you yell at the delivery guy, just remember that somewhere on Earth 69,000 years ago, your great, 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 great grandfather literally fought a 700-kilo cave bear just to settle whose cave it was.